Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the podcast of the one. I'm Greg Riley, and I've got a special two guests today because I've got a really good question to ask people. I've got no idea about this, so I'll go to the experts. Tiff Cook, Craig Harper, thank you for jumping on and helping me through this this question I've got around something that came on the podcast the other day that I heard. So I thought, who's going to get on here that actually would know about this? And I thought, who are the two guns? You guys are the guns.
Who are the two guns? And they weren't available, so Tiff and Harps.
We got you two.
Super cheap, not that good, but pretty available. Hello, Gregory. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure. Appreciate it.
For people who don't know, Craig and Tiff run their own podcast. Craig's doing a master's degree in neuro something about the brain.
It's a
Tiff
doctorate,
is just an
but that's all right.
It's a doctorate. Okay, right. Tiff is, let's call her doctorate life itself, and all-round champion. And I will never get in the boxing ring with her because she would punch the shit out of me. So I wouldn't last around with you, Tiff. But let's get into it.
I was just about to invite you in.
Oh, we can. It'll be a comedy show. You know,
it's all right.
Get a sports bet. Will Greg last one round with Tiff? Yes or no?
She's got a PhD in pugilism, punching.
All right, let's get started. I saw on a podcast the other day, let me get this right, this question. So it was from a psychologist. I can't remember which podcast I saw it on, but he was using the term initiation paralysis, and he was saying it's a disorder for people to not start something that's the reason why people don't take action to improve themselves. Now, I'm not a big label person. I'm sort of going against labels and stuff like that. But to me, that just seems like another excuse for people to sit on the couch and do nothing. And I thought, well, he's a psychologist, or a psychologist, what he was. And I think it's just another excuse people can actually have for not taking action. So I thought, between you guys, because you guys, see a lot of different people, you're very, very good at what you do. What's the real reason why people sort of don't take action initially? And I know there's a lot of trauma and stuff like that. We can get to that side of things, but what's some of the things that you guys have come across that would stop people from actually taking the action they need to? Because remember, Craig, when I was doing your courses, you said, well, this is really, really good. Everyone knows from what food not to eat. Everybody knows what food not to eat. Yet we don't.
Yeah.
And that's sort of kind of the thing is that, well, what's that initiation paralysis really about? Yeah.
Tiff, do you want to start, Tiff, or do you want me? I don't mind.
I'll start. Firstly, I want to ask that psychologist what his problem with the word procrastination was, because that already existed. I don't know why we had to turn it into something that he wants to claim belongs in the DSM.
Yeah.
So, procrastination's already a thing, and I reckon there's a lot of reasons we don't get started on things, and one of the basic ones is we're just creatures of habit. We're used to getting up and doing the same things we're doing before, and so coming up with a new idea to do a new thing is really fun and motivating and exciting. But then you wake up the next day and you're driven by the routines and the behaviors that you've done the day before. And then so you've got to change all of those, and that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, because he was sort of linking it to trauma, saying those people who had this type of disorder, as he called it, was the fact that it was linked to major traumatic issues, that you've had trauma. Someone did something to you, and then that's your excuse as to why you didn't start something.
I mean, I've had trauma. I've started a lot of stuff. I don't know if there's really a link there. It's a very big blanket statement.
Yeah. I think that there's a myriad of reasons why people don't start, or why people get stuck at the starting line, or, and I'm with Tiff, it's like initiation paralysis. Really, it's like analysis paralysis, procrastination, avoidance, denial. They're all first cousins in the I like the idea of this thing, but I'm not going to do this thing because this thing's unfamiliar or uncertain or uncomfortable. or I need to be vulnerable, or, the reason that we don't do things that we should do is often fear-based. So what's the fear? So the fear is, well, fuck, this could be really hard, as Tiff said. I could fail, then I'll be embarrassed, and then I'll lose more confidence. My self-esteem will be worse. I could get physically hurt, or I might, whatever it is. I mean, the thing is that in the world of, this is a wacky term of human optimization or personal development or self-help or, thinking, doing, being better, everything comes at a cost. Greeby, if you want to build this podcast and have tens of thousands of listeners and do lots of great episodes and connect with lots of people, and you don't start on a Monday and then 2 weeks later you've got 1 million listeners. Like, you just have to put in the time, effort, energy, commitment, resources, fall down, get up, develop skills, awareness, understanding, and then eventually, maybe you've got a world-class podcast and lots of listeners in lots of countries and all of those kinds of things. It's just that the stuff that we need to do is often just hard or uncomfortable. And, I don't think there's any kind of magic to this, really.
Do you think people too often look for an excuse not to start because that's their story or that's their identity?
I think people, look, I mean, there are legitimate reasons, right? There is, it's like as Tiff can tell you, I took a tumble in the gym about a week ago and, clinically speaking, fucked my shoulder. So there's a lot of stuff at the moment that I can't do. It's not because I don't want to do it. It's not because I'm lazy or I don't have discipline or willpower. It's because I would fuck my shoulder up more. So that's a reason. But what we do is we have excuses and we call them reasons. Here's an excuse. Right. Here's an excuse. I can't really run in the cold. Well, you fucking can, you just won't. Like, can you actually, well, yeah, I could. Okay. So, and I'm not saying anyone needs to do anything, but if we were to find the reason not to do something, we'll find 10. It's very easy to find reasons to not change. It's very easy to find reasons, I put that in inverted commas, to stagnate, to not make hard decisions, to not do hard work. And, the world doesn't care about your feelings. The world doesn't care about your emotional state. The world doesn't care about whether or not you win or lose. Like, it's great to have support. It's great to have encouragement. And I love supporting and cheering people on and encouraging people. But ultimately, every individual who listens to this chat tonight, they're still the captain of their own ship. They're still the author of their own story. The only person who can overcome that stuckness or that fear or that whatever it is, the only person who can do that is them. Us three can cheer them on for the next 10 years, but none of us can change anyone.
And Tiff, you've got that's a great point. It's a really, really good point. But Tiff, you've got a really good story about how you started boxing and you didn't really go back. Tell us about how you started off in the boxing itself, because you were so far out of your comfort zone. When you first, and you were swinging like all over the place. You could have given up, couldn't you?
Oh, 100%. So I raised my hand for a corporate boxing challenge. It was a 12-week challenge. I'd never done anything like it before. I was just, looking back now, I was just trying to show off, be the girl that does things that girls don't do, look for attention. And once I got into the middle of that experience, it pushed me so far out of my comfort zone, but I'd already told everybody, I was already so far in it that I kind of had to weather the storm. And coming out the other side of that storm and having looked back and gone, shit, I just did that anyway. I'm cutting the story pretty short, but standing on the other side of that gave me the polarizing feeling of like the complete opposite of that. So the empowerment of looking back and going, I was more terrified than I've ever been, but when I did it anyway, the feelings on the other side of that are the most positive, empowering, life-changing feelings that I've ever had. When you were talking before, can I talk about labels a bit?
Yeah, go for it.
So I was just writing down some things.
freelance.
So you talked about the labeling and this idea that we label everything, and I reckon I just wrote down words that I think labels can have some positives to them. So when we can wrap a label around something, we get control and understanding of things, that behaviors we have or do, things about us that we don't understand. So control, understand, reasoning. We get a sense of belonging because we can connect to other people that feel or deal like us, and we get permission to be the person that we've probably been trying to hide, or that we haven't understood and that we've been shamed about. However, I think what happens is we get those labels, and then the label becomes the anchor. The trauma that has given us the label, the reasoning, we quickly attach to it, and it becomes this big, heavy thing that then moves from the back of our mind to the front, and that becomes the thing that actually stops us. I think these days it's far too easy to self-diagnose and label, because we all talk so much about it, which is cool because we get connection, we get to not keep secrets about things. But it means that we're not getting either professionals or good people to give us the skills to be able to manage what that label means or what we need it to mean in order to move forward, and for it not to become an anchor, and for it not to become a reason or make us powerless. Or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because what happens when you actually connect with that label, let's say initiation paralysis, and you identify with that label, what happens in that stage, psychologically and emotionally, when you start to really identify, that's who I am?
So then you don't bother even trying to overcome it, because, because I have this thing that is initiation paralysis. So I just won't bother starting things. I'll just keep doing what I do because I'm powerless now.
And you mentioned before about both of you guys fear. How does fear play into the game of actually not that part of not starting? Because that's a big thing that drives a lot of people from what if.
Do you want to go, Harps?
Oh, all right. I think, like so much of personal growth, I don't really like, but personal development, personal growth, let's just like learning, growing, doing better, thinking better, being better. So much of that happens when we face our fears, whether they're big or small. It's like there's like a bunch of cliches about, it's not about getting to the top of the mountain, that's the thing. It's like who you become in the climb and all of that. It's like not what you achieve, but who you become along the way and all of this. And it's kind of true. Like I've done a bunch of stuff, like I'm 100 years old, and I've done a bunch of stuff that some worked, some didn't. Some was awesome, some was shit. I've done great speaking gigs, terrible speaking gigs. I've had standing ovations. I've had complete fucking meltdowns and everything in between. And, like, unless you're prepared to face your fears in an intelligent, strategic way, it's very unlikely that there's going to be a lot of growth. There's going to be a lot of fulfillment. There's going to be a lot of contentment. Because if we don't manage fear, then fear manages us. And then it's writing our story. We're not writing our story. And now, and I like it when people who are successful, I'm not saying I'm successful, but just in general, where you hear someone who's done some stuff, you guys have done great, Tiff, you, Greg, I've done a few things okay. But when people come out and go, by the way, everyone, I'm still scared. By the way, I still fuck things up. By the way, I'm still insecure, still got a big ego sometimes, still want you to like me, I'm an only child, right? But at the same time, I'm having a crack. But in order for me to keep evolving and developing, I can be fearful and also courageous. In fact, those things go together. Being scared is not bad. Being scared is human. But in the middle of the fear, we have the option of being courageous. Now, I'm talking about
what you really
courageous.
Point to is that is fear the motivation, Harps?
Well, it can be a motivation because we're always moving away from something we don't want or towards something we do want. So when I was the fat kid, without boring everyone who's heard my story too many times, I wanted to be I wanted to be less socially repellent. I didn't want to be socially invisible. I didn't want to be picked last for every sporting team. I didn't want to be embarrassed and humiliated. I didn't want to be called Jumbo, which was my name. I didn't want to be identified by my obesity. There was a whole bunch of things that I didn't want and did want. Well, I wanted acceptance, love, value. I wanted to belong. I wanted to one day maybe have somebody interested in me. I wanted to be attracted to somebody. So it's a convergence of moving away from and moving towards. It's both.
So, because it's never, like you said, it's never going to go away, no matter how far down that line you go of being on the other side. Like I said before, Tiff, on the other side is this, the promised land. But fear still sits there, doesn't it? Insecurity still sits in that space. And it's not all of a sudden it goes away, does it?
So, Greg, what's your answer if I ask you what is fear?
Oh, I connect it more with being afraid. For me personally, and it's I'm not going to be okay.
Yeah. And how do you know when you feel fear? How do you know fear?
Oh, you feel it in your body. It constricts.
Right.
The stress hormones go out, the cortisol, the non-sleeping patterns. It's the emotional reaction. You're short, kind of stuff. You constrict. Your intuition goes down. You stop seeing the bigger picture with stuff. You go for the quick, nasty kind of things to try and overcome. Overcome where you're at. And you just start to isolate yourself as well too. So it's one of these things that you become less community bound as well too. You disconnect from your friends and family and people who do care about you. So it's for me it's really been in a realm of being scared, not being safe, and not being okay.
So I reckon fear is two things. I reckon fear is a story.
Mm-hmm.
And fear is a sensation, and those two things don't marry up.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's really important to create the sensation in the body and understand it in ways that changes your relationship so that your narrative isn't dictated by just the familiar sensation in the body. Because that's what trauma is. Trauma is a sensation that comes up in the body, and then our reason-making machine in our head puts together a story, wrong or right, about why we feel this way, and that dictates our actions.
So does that sort of connect to the fact that when you're in that trauma state and you've got that story that, Greg, no matter what you do, you're going to fail anyway? Is that somewhat driving it as well too? Like, Greg, don't even bother trying to lose weight because you're a fat fucker anyway, kind of stuff. No matter, don't try that. Like I said, don't try and do this because you're going to fail and look like an idiot anyway. Is that sort of what drives someone with as well too?
I reckon we don't even understand what it might be relating to. It's just the sensation comes up, and a lot of it can be buried in the subconscious. And then we are just doing our best, looking around, trying to marry it up and go, I had to learn to understand that before every fight, I had the most sickening waves of fear in my body, but I didn't sit there and go, I'm scared. I had to go, this is pre-fight nerves. So what my body's doing is it's putting me in a state of hyper arousal, which equals performance. Well, that's what it's doing when I walk into a situation that, unbeknownst to me, triggers a trauma response. It's going, we're in a situation where I need you to step into high performance. But often there's something buried in us, so we don't understand what it is that's triggered that. So it's like, how do we manage taking ownership of the story so that we can manage the sensation and create a new relationship with the sensation in our body?
I love how you work because you just led me into the next question for you. We're on this intuition line. Three of us. It's great. Because I went through half of my life trying to get somewhere. The moment it changed for me is when I started to understand how the human mind works and the place of the subconscious mind in this whole process. Once you start to tap into there, it's like the red pill, blue pill kind of world, right? It's like, oh crap, the whole thing opens up. It's to this is why I'm behaving this way. Do you think it's because a lot of people are unaware how their brain works, that they just, if they got that may help? Does that sort of make sense, Harps?
I think a lot of people don't think much about how they think. And I apologize to Tiff and my listeners because I bang on about this a lot. But, well, it's true. I mean, some example, like us three are in the same conversation, but we're not in the same experience. And you go, but same people in the same conversation at the same time on the same bloody call. Why is everyone having a different experience? And that is because we all create our own reality. We all create our own experiences. And sometimes the experiences that we create are good and sometimes are bad. But a lot of the times the experiences that we create are not conscious, but rather just a subconscious byproduct of our worldview. And so when we start to lean into, oh, fuck, this is not real. This is just my story about what's real. So there's the thing that's happening, the objective thing. Oh, I just got some information about my bank balance, as did a million other people did today. And now this is my story. And my story is, this is a catastrophe. This is a major problem. I'm fucked. My life is over. I knew this would happen. And I start to spiral and I tell myself a story and I start to believe the story. And before long, I'm in a state of anxiety and stress, physically, mentally, emotionally, and I've created it. The bloke next door, he got...
What's wrong with the story, though?
Well, and the bloke next door got a similar email or a similar letter, and his news was worse. And he went, oh, fuck, I'll figure it out. Right? So completely different response. So it's not to say bad things don't happen. It's to say that we are constantly creating our own version of reality, our own subjective experiences in the middle of this objective thing that we call life, that intersects with other humans and cars and fucking weather and governments and traffic lights and bills and, you know, all of these things that are just part of the external three-dimensional reality of the human experience. But in the middle of all of that, seen three-dimensional stuff is all the unseen internal stuff. And so my cliche that I wheel out probably too much is that life happens out here around us, but living happens in here. And we are very externally focused in our culture. We are so concerned with what people see and what people think of what we look like and what we have and what we're doing and what we're driving and how clever we are and all our stuff. And we confuse, I've done the same thing. We confuse our stuff with our capital S, self. You know, I looked for myself in my body. I looked for myself in my bigger than life personality. I looked for myself in my fucking money and my business and my bullshit.
My Instagram.
Right? Yeah, my Instagram, my likes, and at the end of the day, it's a fucking unwinnable, slippery slope of bullshit, because when you get 1,000 likes, that makes you feel good for 17 seconds. But if on the next post you get 500 likes, you're depressed. Whereas 6 months ago, 500 likes would have been nirvana. But what's changed is your perception of and your reaction to and your interpersonal exchange with a number. The number is 500. The number is 1,000. But what I'm doing is I'm creating misery around 500. The 500 doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I'm creating misery. I'm creating joy.
So you're basically saying that reality in itself is purely based on how we perceive and think about things.
Our reality is our individual reality. And that's why I say, yes, of course, there's a world we all inhabit. Of course, we're not saying that gravity's not real or, fucking plants and trees and traffic lights don't exist. Of course, but that
the world is flat, don't you know? It is flat.
Well, we know that, but I always talk. Tiff trains with a friend of mine regularly. His name's Johnny. He got blown up 7 years ago by a gas bottle in a work accident. All you have to do is hang around with him for 10 minutes and you'll realize you don't have any fucking problems. Because you can stand. And you
Yes.
can, you know, he can't have sex. He can't wee. He can't go to the toilet. He's in pain 24/7. He's got a traumatic brain injury. He's got a spinal cord injury. His best day is not as good as my worst day. Right. And so I had, and well, maybe that's not totally true, but from a functional point of view, from a pain point of view. So when I spend time with him, or people like him, or Joel, a friend of mine, and Tiff knows Joel as well, who lives in a wheelchair, but spends his wake hours in a wheelchair. You go, oh yeah, so this fucking chick fingernail, or this slight problem I have with this person, or this, you know, this bill I have, yeah, it's not that it's nothing, but it's definitely not an 11 out of 10 catastrophe that I tend to make it. It's a form of self-awareness. It's like opening the door on self-awareness and becoming aware of how I manage or don't manage my mind.
Now you mentioned the magic word self-awareness, which then relates to equal to accountability.
Yeah.
And that's something that people are naturally scared of, isn't it?
Well, people like a get out of jail card, Greg. People like an escape clause, right? So when people say to me, you know, I go, what's your plan? And I go, I've got to get healthy. I go, that's not a plan. That's an idea. Tell me the plan. They're like, what? I go, I want to get healthy is not a plan. That's just a fucking sentence. Tell me the plan. Tell me the structure. Tell me the strategy. Tell me the timeline. Tell me the resources. Tell me what your KPIs are. Tell me what your to-do list is. What are you doing today? Like, and you know, what happens when you're not motivated? What happens when you get injured? What happens when no one's fucking cheering? What happens? Tell me how you are going to build a process to create this. And they look at you like, oh, fuck, I never thought of that. Well, if you don't have all of that shit on board, you don't have a plan. You just have an idea of how things will work. Like, people have an idea of how things will work out. That ain't a plan.
Yeah. So let's just say, Tiff, this is for you. I'm coming to you. My name's Greg. I want to get fit. I've tried before. It's failed before. I've got this imposter paralysis thing going on. What would you say to someone like me as an example that has failed before, but really wants to, but really is not invested in it? So how do you sort of help the listeners in that state go, what are the things you need to sort of do as a first, second, third step to try and move past this stuckness of continually not starting something?
Well, the first thing, you got to figure out why it matters. Like, why does it matter?
Great answer.
Because if you don't know why it matters, if you haven't figured that out, if you haven't figured out what your values are, and not the wanky values that people write on walls in businesses, like what actually matters to you as an individual human being in your life. I've had people, like I used to do a lot of business networking, and I'd often talk about health and fitness. And the biggest thing, everyone in that room, when they would talk about their business, and often they'd share something personal about themselves or a personal goal for the year, and 9 times out of 10, there'd be a weight loss or a fitness goal. None of them were aligning what really mattered to them to that 10 kilos. So what matters to them is either their business and providing for their family, or being a good mum or dad. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't figured out why including some sort of health and fitness regime into your life is actually going to make your business or your family better, then you're not going to prioritize it, because it doesn't matter, because you haven't linked that action to the top things that are really driving you every time you get out of bed every morning.
And like you said before, that big vision on the other side is intrinsically linked to that, what motivates you, exactly why are you doing what you're doing? Because without that, that's a massive hole, a massive gap, and that's, it will continually collapse.
Yes.
Because there is that not, why am I doing this? Without that, it leaves a massive hole, Huffs.
Yeah. So there's the thing that you think you want, and then there's the thing that you need. right? So there's your story, right? So when I was the fat kid, I wanted to lose 30 kilos, but really the weight that I wanted to lose was just a conduit to the things I really wanted. I just wanted you to love me, Greg. You know, I just wanted love. I wanted connection. I wanted to belong. I wanted to be all the things I said before. And so, you know, when we talk about goal setting, I talk about 4 things. And one is that a simple framework is, what do I want? What's my reason, my driver, my motivation? That's the why. How do I do it? That's the strategy. And when. So what, why, how, when. And the why is probably the most important, because that's the goal behind the goal. You know, it's like someone who's earning 60 grand and they want to earn 100 grand. It's not so much about the extra 40 grand as it is what they think the extra 40 grand will do for them. And that's a good reason. That's a good driver. You know, I get it. But the problems happen. Sometimes we go, you know, now I'm earning 100 grand, but I've just upped all my expenses to match the 100. Now I'm still just as stressed. So, you know, the dude who's on 60 grand a year and driving the $30,000 car, you know, whatever, and then he doubles his wage, then he goes and gets a car worth double the price. Now, if the outcome of that was that his life was better and he was happier, then that's a good idea, but that's generally not the case. And so, like, when I want something, I tend to think, what is this about? What's behind this drive or this? And this is coming from a man who's bought not a lot of shit, but yeah, I have bought a lot of cars and motorbikes that I really don't need because I'm a fucking idiot, right? But I know what I'm doing, you know. I haven't bought a new car in years, and I bought one about 4 weeks ago. And true to form, I'm like, I don't need this car. I don't need it. It's too good. It's too fancy. I don't need it. Why did I buy it? It's what I do, right? I've got it. No, you don't even want to know. But like, but I kind of know, but I don't think, I'm going to get the car and my life will be nirvana. I get enamored with cars, you know, but there were a lot of times in my life where I thought a jacked body, a muscular, lean body would equal great self-esteem, no more emotional issues, and I'd be a fucking chick magnet. Well, none of that worked out. I was just a bigger, still insecure. I was just a more muscular fuckwit, right? Still trying to resolve emotional and spiritual and psychological issues with biceps and shoulders, because, you know, I was just looking for answers in the wrong place. And that's what our, you know, I'm not trying to blame culture or society, but in a way, our culture and society and media and social media teaches us that success and happiness is about things, you know, and when you go down the things path, things aren't bad, but you're probably not going to fix your crappy self-esteem or your childhood trauma with a 100-inch plasma TV. You know, you might need to do a bit of work.
So you mentioned before about self-awareness, and like when I speak to one of the big things when I speak to my clients is that is intuition and self-awareness are the two of the biggest things I will teach you. Is that something that's really lacking from people today, that step into that self-awareness and accountability? Is that what you kind of see across the board? Is this external validation, yet there's no inward kind of search?
Yeah. So there's an idea in psychology called the false consensus effect, or a construct, as we call it, Greg. And all it means is that we think that other people think like us, right? And we think that our intention will be someone else's experience. But the truth is that the only person living in my thoughts and my intentions and my mind is me. So for me to be able to understand, or for me to be able to say, connect with Tiff, if Tiff and I are sitting down and we're doing a problem solving session or I don't know, whatever personal professional development session, it's in my interest to understand Tiff's version of right now. Same with you, if you and I are doing, and right now, as we're talking to your audience, I'm cognizant of the fact that not better or worse, but just different. Most of your listeners aren't me or a version of me, and they don't think like me. So I'm trying to constantly talk about what can be complicated shit in an easy to understand way so that it's of value to people, and I am of service. But I think that, you know, like my PhD is in self-awareness. It's around a thing called metaperception, which is understanding the you experience. And the story that I always share is, or the question I always ask is, put up your hand if you've ever heard your voice on audio tape or audio recording, and everyone shakes their head and puts up their hand reluctantly because everyone thinks they sound shit. And I say, well, that's how you sound all the time to me, you know? And so it's understanding that what you're hearing is not what I'm hearing. And that's a really nice metaphor because, you know, like you've never breathed, you've never sat across the table for you and had a coffee with you. You've never looked at you in conversation, but I have. Same with me. So I am constantly taking an educated guess at the Craig experience for others. And so our ability to realize that the way we think is just the way we think, not good or bad, not right or wrong. And it's different to everyone else at the table. And in order for me to be able to build rapport and trust and respect and connection with Greg and Tiff in the moment, I need to try to understand how this moment is for them now. You know, and so it's a fucking fascinating area of thought, you know.
Because it unlocks so much potential. And Tiff, how you've come from and people guys go back and listen to a lot of Tiff's podcasts because she talks about her past and thought, but how hard is it to get past that thinking of because of what's happened to you?
Well, I think we all have a different relationship with that. But one of the things I was thinking just now as you guys were talking was this idea. Have you ever had a teacher or a coach that's kind of talked down to you, that talk to you like you're a bit of a piece of shit, that you're not very good at, and tells you that?
Usually it's me.
Well, this is the point I'm making, right? You have someone that doesn't like you and they're a bit mean to you, and then they're trying to get you to perform better. How do you perform?
Terrible.
Exactly. But how do we speak to most of ourselves? How do you speak to yourself internally when you want to change, when you're not doing? So someone comes to me in the gym and they're overweight and they're like, I've lost weight and put it on, and I've lost weight and I've put it on, and I always do this and I screw it up. Well, their internal dialogue is fucking terrible. I can't change them for the rest of their life by being nice to them. They have to start to be nice to them and compassionate while simultaneously learning how to kick their own ass with a nice, respectful voice. Like, it's a really balanced thing, I think.
That's a really good point you make, Tiff, because I'm all like, we're big these days on self-love and self-care. And I'm like, kinda. Because you do have to be kind to yourself, but also don't be fucking delusional and just hope that everything will work itself out, because it won't. So it is a real juxtaposition of balancing real awareness with, you know, it's like, oh, I fucked up, but that's okay. Like there's a big space between self-awareness and self-loathing. Self-awareness is great. Self-loathing is pointless. But we can be critical in a constructive way or a destructive way. And it ain't about beating yourself up. It's about, like, you know, sometimes I think we complicate it. I often sit down with someone, Greg, and I go, okay, what's not working in your life? Ready, set, go. And then they just bang out 3 things. I go, cool. Let's talk about them.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't overthink it. I go, what about you and your diet? Nah, not really. Cool. Diet, 1. What about you and sleep? Nah, fucking hopeless. Cool. 2. What about you and your kids? Could be better. All right, cool. There's 3 things. Let's talk about that. All right, now let's talk about you and sleep. Tell me typically, right? So it doesn't have to, we don't need to be Freud. We don't need to be Einstein. We don't need a doctor or a psych necessarily involved in the process. Once we go, you know, it's like, well, is one of your values health? Yes. okay, are you doing anything that's currently bad for your health? Yes. All right, let's start there. Yeah, I
Come
know.
on.
Yeah, like we simultaneously on the same day will say, fucking hell, I've got to get in shape. Also, Greg, pass me that beer. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, which do you want? Because the other part of this, and Tiff knows this all too well, we talk about this a lot on her show and mine, is that, you know, our real addiction is dopamine. Our real addiction is that we, you know, when I was a fat kid, I'd reach for the pie or the sausage roll or the chocolate Big M or all three on most occasions. I'd reach for that and I'd feel instantly fucking great. But if I didn't have the pie, sausage roll and Big M, I wouldn't have instant weight loss. So fuck it, I'll have the dopamine today and I'll start tomorrow. And that becomes a 1 million day in a dialogue where every day I'm always starting the next day, but not fucking this day. And it's amazing how many people I catch or I talk to, and whatever it is that they need to change, it's never today that it's changing. And boom, now they're 40. But, and again, it's you're just bullshitting yourself. Is that harsh? Maybe. Is it true for many people? I mean, you know, my background, and I honestly didn't have my shit together with food until I was 40. And I've been a gym owner for 15 years by that stage and working in the industry for 22 and telling people what to do and how to do it and why to do it. And when no one was looking, I was doing what I was telling them not to do because I couldn't get my own shit together. Right? This is human. It took me forever. Human. And work in progress. If we three wait until we've got all our shit together before we do our job, we're never doing our job.
No, and we're not. Look, I remember, I do remember some of the stuff that you did teach me, Harps. One of them was, what's the you experience? And the second part was, if I think this, how do I have to behave, feel, and act? And they're powerful, powerful things, right? Just, you know, from people to go, okay, how do I make immediate change here? They're two of the biggest things you can actually just have to sort of start now, is to go, right, like we were saying before, how are people experiencing me?
Yes.
And then if I think this, then from that thought, how do I have to behave, think, and act and feel from that thought? And if you step back and have the self-awareness and go, oh, shit.
Yes.
My God, no wonder my life's like it is.
Yes. You know, I was listening to a podcast as I was driving home from the old man's just before, and I was dictating stuff by audio. I wasn't typing. And one of the things I wrote down is, for all of the problems I've ever had in my life, I was there for 100% of them. Like, I'm the fucking common denominator. What?
Correct.
For all of the bad relationships that I've had, the only common denominator is me.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'm not saying I'm 100% of the problem all the time, but if you're constantly having problems and you're the only one that's always 100% of the time present in those problems, at the very least, you might want to go, fuck, maybe I need to pull back the curtain a little bit and get a little bit of self-awareness, you know, because maybe, I know this is terrifying, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe sometimes I'm the problem. And, you know, I know that at least half of the time in my life, I'm the problem. You know, my thinking, my behavior, my reaction, whatever. And that's not me being self-deprecating or falsely humble. It's just fucking true. Like, I'm so not spectacular. That's, you know, my mediocrity has been my superpower because I wasn't super gifted. I became super motivated.
I remember,
and that's kind of what fueled me.
I was speaking to, I wasn't speaking to, I was listening to a interview that Billy Slater did for his Hall of Fame stuff about Craig Bellamy. And exactly to that point, why the difference in why they were so successful as a team through Melbourne Storm was the fact that it wasn't individual brilliance. It was that sheer self-awareness and hard work and introspection and to look within yourself, is that constant getting up and stuff like that. But I want to change tack And Tiff, I want to sort of just, because I love my spiritual shit. Because the people who don't go down that path, there's this allure of the spiritual world who, let's just call them the quantum manifestation people, who think that visualization and affirmations is all you need to do. And then magically shit just happens and you can sit on the couch. And people get, trapped into that because that's the easy way. All I just have to do is raise my vibration, visualize my vision board, and then do a few affirmations in the morning. How does that sort of, not work for people? Because you're sort of just going down a track that's, again, it's that easy option.
Yeah, I love this. I rant on this a lot. Because I think it's an easy sell, right? But how many people do you hear come to you with exciting news? They're like, I manifested this. I manifested this. I manifested it. No one ever comes to you and goes, I manifested another shit relationship. I manifested a bad business situation. I manifested that. Like, I've manifested plenty of shitty things. But I think the manifestation argument, I think that the science behind it for me, when I look at my belief, is when you hold something in your awareness and focus on it, you see and create opportunities. You see the patterns in the situations that pop up in front of you that would have anyway, and you see them because something's on your mind, and because you're feeling positive and driven, you'll take action that you might not have taken action on before. And it's an easy sell because we can all relate to moments of that. The first time I ever picked up The Secret in a woo-woo bookshop with a mate, I opened it up. I didn't read books. I looked at it, I'm like, I'll read the first page. I'm like, oh, I've had moments and where this shit's happened to me. Now, I didn't go home and sit on the couch and try and manifest $1 million, but I knew that there was something in what that book was relating to that had something that I understood in a certain way. I just think I hate seeing people sell manifestation because it's a cop-out. You can't prove it or disprove it, and guess what? If you don't manifest it, it's your fault. You just didn't do it right. You got to pay me anyway. I hate that.
I had a guy on my show recently, I forget his name, I can't remember if you were there, Tiff, researcher from Queensland, and his PhD was actually assessing, or one of the papers he did in his research was assessing whether or not essentially in layman's terms, the law of attraction was bullshit. It worked. And the answer is it doesn't work. But what it does is it works if you attach it to action and a plan and rolling up your sleeves and taking a chance.
Correct.
And, it's like sitting on the couch visualizing, it's like it's having a good attitude and having a plan and visualization. All of those things can be helpful, but on their own, it's like you might have a PhD in exercise physiology, but you live on a diet of hamburgers and Coke and couch. And despite the fact that you're a doctor of exercise physiology, you're wildly unhealthy because despite your knowledge, you do stupid things and make stupid decisions. Like, it's always, a collision of knowledge and wisdom and work and effort and discipline and awareness and self-control. Show me one well-known, successful person who hasn't worked hard. I don't know any. I do not know one. And I've coached not millions. I've coached a lot. I've worked with a lot. Show me one person who's got a reputation, who's done great. And I don't mean they've got to be an Olympic gold medalist or maybe they don't have a reputation, but somebody who's just been successful in their field, who hasn't had peaks and troughs and fuck-ups and failures and wins and losses and tears and laughter. I've never met that person. I've never met the person who hasn't done the work, but yet nonetheless has succeeded. And even, interestingly, the research on people who have a windfall, like they win Tats Lotto, you know what I'm going to say, and get $5 million. Invariably they lose it and end up broke because they don't know how to make money and they haven't done the work.
It sort of gets me to the quote, knowledge versus wisdom. Knowledge is information without action. Wisdom is knowledge and action. One's just information in your head, which is information in your head. The other one is actually all that stuff in action and in place, and they're poles apart. So,
yeah,
guys,
it's about what you do with it. 100%. What you know matters. What you do with what you know matters most, because what you do, like action creates outcomes. Knowledge doesn't. Knowledge is great, but it's like, oh, Greg's got a $10,000 exercise bike. He's never fucking got on it, but he's got one. It's currently got sheets hanging on it in the spare room. But if he rode that motherfucker for half an hour a day, he might be fit, but he doesn't. But he's got one, though.
Because it was about looking good, remember?
100%. Knowledge is the same. Like knowledge that isn't used wisely, as you asserted, Brother Greg, it's ridiculous. Doesn't happen.
Guys, this has been brilliant. We're 50 minutes in. I want to talk for 5 hours, but we can't. What's one little piece of advice you would give to someone right now who's listening to this thing? Right, I'm motivated. I want to change something. I want to do something about it. What should they do?
Do you want to go, Tiff?
Yeah.
I'm going to say do one thing every single day. It doesn't matter how big or small, but take one step every day. And if that's fucking putting your shoes on and walk into the letterbox and back, and then jogging the next day, and then, around the block, like just do something every day, because habit and routine are very powerful to creating an identity.
I'm going to say, expose yourself to different ideas, different thinking, different people, different ideologies and philosophies, not because you necessarily want to join them or be like them, but we don't realize the extent that confirmation bias impacts our thinking and choosing and behaving and outcomes. When we live in an echo chamber of thought and philosophy and behavior, it's almost impossible to grow. So get the fuck out of that echo chamber and go see what's outside of your little box, and you might have your fucking head blown off.
Brilliant. Well, guys, if you guys got anything coming up, courses, material, I'll put the links down to the podcast below. Anyway, is there anything that people can jump onto that's coming out soon?
When is this going live, Gregory?
We are recording 1st of September, so this will be late September.
Well, then, all the shit I want to promote has been. And I'll just say, everyone, you missed out. It was fucking amazing. What are you putting up?
Join the mailing list.
Put it up this week. Come on.
This week. Well, I'll pull up this week if you want. I can do that this week.
You can cut out this promo and share it.
So I am on. It depends when it goes up. But yeah, next. So we're recording this on the 1st of September. So next Sunday, which is the 8th of September, I have an event in Melbourne at Deakin University, which is 3 hours, which is called Understanding You. It's a workshop about, surprisingly, understanding the self, physical, mental, emotional, psychological, perhaps spiritual, behavior, practical, the understanding yourself, why you do the stuff you do and don't do the stuff you don't do. That's Sunday. And then on Monday I start, which is the 9th, I think. Yeah, I start a 10-week mentorship, which is, I think we've got 1 or 2 spots left, which is just for 15 people. It's not cheap, but it's a fully immersive 10 weeks with me. So 10 mentoring sessions with just 15 people and a one-on-one session with me. Everyone gets as well. Just go to CraigHarper.net.
I've done Craig stuff. Seriously, people. There's things you do in your life and there's things you look back at and then you're in your old rocking chair, smoking your pipe and looking at the sunset. And there's some things you remember. And that will be one of them, is the weeks I spent with you, Harps. So
checks in the mail, bro. Thank you.
Guys, so because of that, I'll put it out this week. Everybody, look, thanks for coming on, guys. Appreciate it. For everybody are listening, yes, there's some tough things in here. That's the point of having discussions like this, is having tough chats to get you beyond this kind of label of Well, I think initiation paralysis, because
That's it.
there's a lot more out there than just that. So, guys, thank you very much, and everybody, we will see you on the next podcast. Catch you later.
Thanks, mate.